Good afternoon to our audience and welcome to the executive panel of Women in Cybersecurity Middle East, WiCSME 2021 conference. A very warm welcome to all of you. We are thrilled today to have 4 of the most amazing, accomplished, and globally recognized women in different cybersecurity specializations from different countries around the world. I'm really looking forward to hearing their insights and their perspectives on a very important topic that we really need to reflect upon nowadays, which is how do we evolve with the new norm and how do we creatively embrace the conditions that it has brought upon us. But first, before we start, let's have a quick round of introductions with our very amazing ladies. Why don't we go with you, Lynn, first, and then each one can introduce herself, please, to the audience.
Sure, thank you. So my name is Lynn Dohm. I'm Women in Cybersecurity Executive Director. We often go by our acronym WiCSS, W-I-C-Y-S, and we pronounce it WiCSS because we are a cyber sisterhood. And so we're a 501c3 member-based US nonprofit with a global reach. So we have representation in over 70 countries. We have 40 professional affiliates all around the world, 140 student chapters, and our mission is to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity. So I have the great honor of holding this role as executive director since October of 2019. It's been quite a journey through the pandemic. So I'm happy to be speaking about this topic here today with you other ladies. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. Jacqui, can we hear from you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jacqui Loustau, and I'm in Down Under in Australia. I've been the founder of the Australian Women in Security Network, which is also called the AWSN or AWSN. And I started that 7 years ago, and I've been the executive director for just this year, which is very exciting. And our aim is to connect, support, and inspire women in security. And obviously, you know, we've gone through quite a lot through the pandemic down here in Australia, so I'm looking forward to this talk.
Yes, thank you. Kerstin?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm absolutely honored to be here. Thank you for having me. I represent the Executive Women's Forum on Information Security, Risk, and Privacy. We're a 20-year-old organization. We're celebrating our 20th anniversary actually in the coming year. We're super excited. We're an organization that is dedicated to engaging, advancing, and developing women leaders. We serve emerging leaders and some of the most prominent and influential women by facilitating virtual and live programs and events throughout the year. We're also a sisterhood. We stress not just the professional, but also the personal growth. I myself have around 20 years experience and professional experience overall. I started my career more the operations, process, communication side, but very early in my career started weaving in the technology pieces. So within this space, I have GRC experience as well as service delivery experience on the consultant side of large scale, multi-year strategic programs that have been delivered to clients, as well as the operational side, and then of course, executive leadership. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Kerstin. And last but not least, Vandana.
Thank you, Abeer. So hi, everyone. I'm Vandana. I'm currently in India, and I'm representing OWASP and InfosecGirls here, wherein I'm one of the board members for OWASP, currently serving as a vice chair, which is trying to enable and share knowledge around application security with the people and community. About InfosecGirls, we started 7-8 years ago, where we wanted to have more women in cybersecurity in India specifically. Started off with Bangalore, and now we have 25 chapters around. And recently we started off InfoSec Diversity, so we can have more diverse people in cybersecurity. Especially a lot of students come and ask that, can we also be part of it? Can we also share knowledge? So InfoSec Diversity, we started with that mission. And thank you so much for inviting me here.
Thank you, Vandana, and really thank you to all of you amazing ladies, and thank you for all the efforts that you do for women in cyber. Now, for our discussion today, as we all have experienced, no doubt the pandemic has impacted our lives, our families, and our jobs. It also tested our resilience and our flexibility to continue to survive and actually embrace the new life and work conditions introduced upon us. Of course, some jobs were impacted by these conditions more than others, such as healthcare professionals, for example. Cybersecurity professionals were also among the most impacted. Now, from where you come from, how do you see the negative and positive impacts of the pandemic on cybersecurity professionals? How do you see that, Lynn, for example? We start with you.
Sure. So when we realized how significantly impacted COVID was making its way through all of countries, I think we realized then too that community aspect of our organization was even more critical now more than ever. I mean, studies have come out about women dropping out of the workforce. 1 out of 4 women have stepped out of the workforce. And of course, that impacted all IT fields as well. So we had a lot of great concerns for our cybersecurity professionals that have worked so hard to get where they're at. And then the responsibilities of caretaking for family members and also the work from home environment being extremely stressful was very, very challenging on them. And we also know that burnout is a real thing. You know, 1 out of 4 women that have stepped out of the workforce, 3 out of 4 of them identified it was just burnout. It was too much. They couldn't balance. That balancing act was too much on them. And so they had to pick one over the other. So, you know, this impacted us all, impacted our families, the communities, the companies we work for, the organizations we love and support. And, you know, there's some silver linings that came out of it for the workforce moving into that work from home environment and multitasking and be able to come out with that. And so I know with me, the negative side was, of course, the stress, what we saw on our members, the incredible amount of stress. The positive side is how we saw that the community came together to support one another and how the companies really leveled up and brought this sense of authenticity kind of back into the workplace, of really listening to the human experience of what everyone was going through, because it was such a shared experience across every level and everyone was being impacted by it. So I would love to hear more what these lovely ladies have to say about this as well.
Yes, I agree with you. And building on that, Kerstin, maybe you would like to add how you see, Lynn said that some women had to leave their jobs because of the stress of the pandemic and the conditions. How do you see this happening? Because, you know, you work in that.
Yeah, I was one of them, right? I recently joined the EWF and left my previous position as a CEO of a cybersecurity consultant company, a technology company, because the weight on and the mental load on women during this time, I feel, and I agree with Lynn, just has increased significantly. But I also feel it has put a focus on the already existing skills gap. And while people are leaving, I think a lot of people are moving into other positions within the industry or just reprioritizing where do they want to be, what works for them. And I've heard the term, the great resignation, multiple times, right? So I'll pick that up. But if you look at the obvious, the suddenly higher demand of infrastructure to business continuity becoming a reality versus a concept for a lot of organizations, I think what was realized in that moment and what's accelerated, and that's a great thing for us, is that skills gap is just critical to address. And what that has brought about, which I think is extremely important, is more opportunity for that diversity factor, right? Organizations were already struggling, and now more than ever, organizations need innovative and creative ideas. And I tie that back to that diversity factor. So I think that's a positive thing. We still have a lot of work to do, but I think it's a nice positive impact this has had.
Yes, good for diversity, then good for women. Opportunity, it's a stress, but also presents an opportunity. How do you see that, Jacqui?
Yeah, I was just going to add the fact that, you know, a lot of industries were impacted, for example, the tourism and healthcare. And we actually saw quite a few women transitioning and wanting to get into cybersecurity during this time because they needed to retrain and they needed to find a new job. So that was some of the, you know, positives that came kind of out of that as well. But as Lynn and Kerstin said, it's the same thing here in Australia. We had the same thing happen to us over here. Obviously, it's a global impact, obviously, to family life. Yeah. And we found that, the fathers had to step up as well, being at home. That was a really positive thing. Companies realized that they could actually, people could work from home. They rapidly had to adapt. So I think that, there were some positives that came out of this pandemic, but obviously a lot of negatives as well in terms of stress and, some toxic behavior that started to happen because of the stress that was actually put on a lot of companies and organizations and teams. But
Yeah, that happened, definitely. Vandana, you are the younger here, the youngest maybe. And some of the young people in my team saw the pandemic, as a tornado for the young security professionals. We had a very accelerated pace for digital transformation, and also the bad guys were not taking a break either. So how do you see this with the young professionals?
I would say it's how you take it. So it was something which we never anticipated. Especially think about 3 quarters without going to office, without actually working from the premises. And even now also, we have not been working from the office premises. So that obviously changed a lot of perspectives. Personally, for me, what I could see that I got more closer to the family. I used to travel a lot, but then it made me more closer to my children. And then another important aspect is that, as Jacqui said, that fathers step up and started taking those responsibilities. Like right now, I'm in a meeting and he's taking care of the child. And another important factor that kicked in is that while we are dealing with all of that, there is a positive in everything. I got to connect with so many wonderful people, which I might not have been able to do it when I was traveling or maybe while I was going to the conferences. Here, right now, we are sitting with 4 ladies and speaking, and including you. So that one opportunity may not have been with me when I would have been working from office, because then you have official commitments, you have to be there, you have to show your face. Another important aspect is that burnout. I totally agree with all of you ladies that burnout is actually real, because there is no work boundary, which is there now. We are working in the early morning, we start working early morning, and then it goes till late in the night. And then in the middle, we go for cooking and we go for taking care of kids and whatnot. And I think everyone is doing that, be it women, men, anyone in the house. So those boundaries have just faded away, which is actually creating a lot of stress. And the only thing that I can see is that the mental health, organizations have started talking about it, that mental health is important. And yes. At the same time, go ahead, Abeer.
Yes, sure. I was telling you, yes, we're going to get into this mental health and mental wellness. But regarding the point you were mentioning, that there are no boundaries anymore. So how do you see the cybersecurity teams coping with that? Especially with that part, the new norm is introducing regarding hybrid work models. I admit myself to a problem with that, because there is what they call the proximity bias. I have some people on premise here in the office and some people working from home, and the people working from home may not be up to beat with everything taking place in the office. How do you see that?
So the most important aspect is that when we are in office, actually we have started to realize the most important fact is that we have defined hours that we will be in office, we'll take care of the things. But now while we are working from home, we are taking up meetings early morning, and that those stress levels have increased. And we want to do a lot more than what we used to do, and still have that guilt feeling that we are not doing enough. And I remember when the pandemic started, we started having face-to-face meetings at 9 a.m. And we were thinking, the whole team was thinking, who does the meeting at 9 a.m. and that to face-to-face? And especially when you are working from home. So those things now have started to change. And for cybersecurity, I would say what I have seen with my friends, that they have started to enjoy, be it a leader, be it anyone. They've started to enjoy this time because they can actually spend more time in implementing the ideas with the team. And they've accepted the fact, even though we are not going to be in one premise, but still we will be able to deliver the best. And those issues or those concerns which came in the beginning of the pandemic, those have started to fade away. And those guilt issues, we had that, especially I had that, whether I'm working or not, whether I am able to give the right time or not. So those things have started to go away. And with the leaders, they started to understand that now this is the new normal, and we will be spending time this way itself.
Yeah. But how do others see the coping thing? How do you see the hybrid work models, the flexible work hours? How are we coping with that as cybersecurity professionals and as women in particular?
So I have to...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So I just wanted to add something to the previous thought. I'll go ahead. What I wanted to say is I do see a change now versus when we first started, or we're 6 months in or 12 months in. I feel like organizations are getting a better handle of it. And I think people on a personal level are getting a better handle of it. I also feel that what we're seeing is more opportunity. And when I say opportunity, what I mean is it's not just the job change, but it's also the thought process of inclusivity. And Lynn mentioned authenticity earlier. I think what's happening now is because organizations are competing for talent so much that culture is stressed more than ever, right? And it includes the flexibility of work schedules, the higher compensation, but also the culture. And I think that has also moved with now in focus, and it hasn't always been to that extent. And what's happening is people are starting to feel more comfortable with being themselves when they apply for a job, with really understanding what their needs and wants are. And again, I switched positions just because I reevaluated of what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be, and what my future would look like. And I think we now have the opportunity to do that more. In the beginning, we didn't quite, right? We were all heavily loaded, everybody's stressed, those lines were blurring. I tried to set the norm with my team that we're not meeting before a certain time. We're trying not to meet during lunch. Let's not put meetings on the calendar too late in the day, but then also take your time off and don't forget to have some fun with each other, right? We spend so much time at work. It's like family. So let's treat it as such and really connect with each other.
Okay, well said. Lynn, you had a thought?
Yeah, Kerstin, very good. And Vandana, we're all in total agreement. Like the lines were so blurred. I think what's nice now is we are level set a little bit. And I don't know about you all, but I've worked from my home office for the past 16 years. And it was a very stifled type of work condition. I didn't really want anyone to know that I was working from a home office because I felt like it would be a different type of experience for those during the meetings. But prior to the pandemic, we were hosting Zoom sessions. We were in WebEx meetings, but nobody had their camera. Nobody. And I remember the first time I met with a partner of ours, and they had their camera turned on. And this was pre-pandemic. I was like, whoa. People turn on their cameras. Like, I know that's like an option available, but boom, all of a sudden March 5th hit, March 12th of 2020, and everyone has their cameras on. So it was almost like the boundaries that we've set upon ourselves, we kind of reduced those and we turned on our cameras. And I really feel the level set was that authenticity again, like we showed up as our authentic selves, because the men that we were also meeting with also had children running in the background. And so now we have this level set playing field where we're all collectively working to get through these challenging times, and we're succeeding at it. We're meeting, we're doing business, we're growing, and we're expanding. And in some way, we got more connected because we're invited into people's homes. You know, this is my home. This is how it is. You know, the dogs are locked up right now, thank goodness, because I remembered to do it, but that only happens about 50% of the time. Normally there's a dog in the background, and this is just the reality. But the point is that we're professional women that are doing a good business and doing a good job, and we're all advancing in our careers because of it and leveling others up with us, and that this can be done. So it's been here long enough. We've proven that this hybrid and this in-person or this virtual work environment can work, and we can do it. And we're all moving forward with that. So, I mean, in some ways, it's really exciting how it's kind of retrained the whole work mindset itself.
Yeah. So regarding coping again, how do you measure productivity now? Because you said that there are no boundaries. So how do you still, you know, ensure that your teams are productive? Jacqui, your thoughts on this? How do you ensure productivity is still, you know, manageable and measurable?
Yeah, it kind of flows in from the last discussion, and a point that I wanted to make is that there's different flexible workings now. So I've always worked part-time since I had my kids, which was something that even in certain countries that I worked in, it was not really acceptable. But in Australia, you know, flexible working was something that we think very strongly about. And so I think I did so many different flexible workings. I actually changed into a small business, working from a big corporate into a small business. And they allowed me to then work flexibly because of the homeschooling. So in my particular state in Victoria, we're the most locked down state of the world, I think, because we've been pretty much 18 months in lockdown, which has been really hard for homeschooling. And so I've had to homeschool. So I had to take off my mornings to do homeschooling because there was no choice really, and then to work during the afternoon and the evenings in order to do my work. And we saw that a lot of companies started to adapt to that because there was no choice. Like there was no hope in sight that we were going to get out of lockdown. So we started to see that people were putting, even in their email, you know, my company is considered a flexible working organization. I'm sending you this email in the times that are convenient to myself. We don't expect that you then reply to this email, because what was happening was people were sending emails really late at night because that's when they were working. And people were thinking, oh my gosh, that person's working so late, because that was our mindset. Like we always were thinking, you know, you work 9 to 5, and if you're working outside of that time, you're working extra hours. But actually people were shifting and working in the times which were flexible to them during this pandemic. So I think in terms of answering your question about the productivity, I think it's actually output. So a lot of things things have moved now towards, you know, the outcomes. So, you know, giving people an objective in terms of, okay, these are the things that we actually need to do. And if they're actually delivering that, then that is a metric of, you know, performance, as opposed to before when, you know, you were looking at someone saying, oh, that person's really working really late and they're doing their hours. I think that has actually changed now, which I think is a positive.
Yeah. Okay. So thoughts on this, regarding productivity of teams, how to manage it?
I'd like to get on top of that real quick. I agree 100%. I think it's time to reevaluate what are we tracking and why. What metrics truly matter? I think a lot of organizations in the past have just tracked certain metrics, but now is a good time to reevaluate that. And then just like you said, track the deliverables and outcomes. It's not about tracking the hours your team is spending. It's not about micromanaging. It's all about what outcomes are you trying to achieve and how do you get there. When I put my hat on of VP strategy and operations, I think about strategic goals and how we can reach those goals and objectives. What's changing for us is the how we're doing that in some instances. And I think we need to reevaluate also what are our strategic goals and objectives. But once those are clear, the how can be addressed if it's different than it was in the past by being creative and innovative and having a diverse team, right, to have those innovative solutions that you otherwise may not have at hand.
Yeah. Yeah. So allow me here to inject, if you're particularly working with consulting, and I have seen so many of the consulting companies put statements like, we are going to allow employees to work from home forever, for example. This is going to be a permanent arrangement. But then I think if we inject the element of culture, and if those companies work cross-cultural, so for example, here in the Mediterranean, I come from Egypt, and we are, we like to communicate a lot, and perhaps a lot of those virtual meetings with consultants may not be the best thing. So how do you manage this new norm across different cultures? You know what I mean? It's not every culture may have the same perspective towards the virtual meetings to continue as a norm afterwards. So is flexibility here should be an option? How are we going to deal with that?
I would say that now people have accepted that we will do the Zoom calls. There were Zoom calls which are happening, but then now, even the more, I have started seeing that on Zoom call or WebEx or all these meetings which are happening online, they are more productive, where people are like, okay, now this is a time where I have to sit for the meeting and I have to prepare a presentation. Any which ways, I cannot be in person there. So it's in the brain now. We have accepted the fact that we have to take care of these things online itself. Especially, I have seen the case with IBM, with Wipro, and many other consulting companies that they have accepted this. And similarly, even the salespeople, think of the cybersecurity sales team, the products have started to sell more because now security is needed even more. Like the breaches that we have started seeing from SolarWinds to whatnot, even though they were there, they have been there. Supply chain attacks and whatnot, they have been there. It's just that now we have started to talk about it. We have started to read more about it. We have started to share more about it. So probably, I think the fact that it is going to be this for another coming years. So let's go ahead and build the system in this way. I think that's helping a lot of organization and even the people and the leadership.
So more flexibility. Yeah. Yes, more flexibility. Okay. We raised the point before a little earlier that we cannot possibly talk about such a challenging crisis that the whole world is facing without thinking about the short-term and long-term impact on wellness, mental health. So ladies, what changes are you seeing companies making in terms of how they provide for and encourage wellness and better work-life balance for their employees? So I think Kerstin, Lynn, would like to go first?
The one thing that really stood out to me is from the start is the leadership starting to talk about it. And those weren't conversations that I was seeing prior to the pandemic, is really being openly and publicly acknowledging mental wellness, mental health, and like marking off calendar days for folks not to have meetings, because leadership itself recognized that we are in back-to-back meeting cycles. This wouldn't happen if we were in the office. We would have a break at the water cooler. We would be, we would be getting into an elevator and going to a different meeting room. We'd be stopping and we'd be eating lunch and having candid conversations. And now we've eliminated all that space, kind of that space in there. And now we just go. So we crunch it all in. And so the leadership is acknowledging it. They are making, progress in that. But I also think that everyone in general is acknowledging it too and being more vocal about what their needs are. And it's the thoughtful, mindful leaders that really care about the retention of their great talent that are listening and implementing the protocols that is to protect not only everyone that's working for them, but also the company itself. So it's very critically important for that. And it all comes from listening.
Yeah, I agree. It's
Kerstin,
communication.
how do you see corporate? Yeah.
Yeah, it's communication.
Kerstin, how do you
leadership.
see corporate life, yes, now changing with to ensure that there is wellness embedded in this new norm and the new hybrid work conditions?
Sure. So I think every company is different. And to Lynn's point, I think the communication and the leadership are the critical parts here. I do think while the communication to me is the foundation of it all, it's also important to set up your employees for success. Have processes in place when somebody's out of office, right? Whether that is cross-training or documentation, that when somebody has to be out of office for, let's say, an emergency or really just to take a vacation, that they don't fear coming back into some sort of chaos or 5,000 emails that have stacked up, right? So on the operational side, support your employees by putting the right processes in place and lead by example. Take your time off. I see more and more organizations starting employee groups or scheduling fun time, right? Whether that is some sort of day outside of the office with tents up where they play games, but just making sure that there's a bit of that balance between the connectivity, the interconnectivity of folks and the hard work that everybody is putting in. Recognizing that, talking about it, and putting some basic tools in place, to me, is what I've seen the most.
Yes, yes. And Jacqui, what's happening in Australia corporate life?
Yeah, I think it's similar to what everyone else is saying, that a lot of companies have been really tested in these times for being able to adapt, as well as building a really great culture in order to keep their staff and to provide well-being and mental health facilitation. So I think a lot of people, when they're looking for a job now, will be asking those types of things because they've realized now, and they've spent this time realizing what was important to them. They have realized that maybe, they want to spend more time with the family. They've really enjoyed being able to work from home. And so they actually now know these are the things that are non-negotiables. And so companies are recognizing that they have to put in ways in which they can make that work in order to keep their staff, but also to attract new talent.
Yes. Are you seeing, Vandana and any other lady, are you seeing companies now making the work week 4 days instead of 5? Anyone experimenting with this?
I have seen many organizations have started doing it, but then they are actually putting it on the employees what they really want to opt. Because if it's a 4 days a week, then they have to spend 12 hours per day. And that change I've seen with many companies, wherein you can have time off anytime. And even another important aspect that I've seen is that there are certain days that they have defined that you have to take off for yourself. There are mental health helplines that they have created for you and your spouse, so that if you want to discuss anything, you can go ahead and talk about it. So I think those are the things which are really, really helpful and which are actually making people grow personally and professionally at the same time.
Yes, I'm interested to see if someone is doing this 4 days a week schedule, if it's working or not, the employees are happy or not, still productive or not. I think the coming days will show the results of that. Now, I want to move to the most important element in our panel. I heard Simon Sinek recently say that trying to recreate online how we worked before and lived prior to the pandemic is not creativity. So I want to know your thoughts about how do you see that we can creatively implement the lessons learned from the pandemic to improve our lives and the way we work. So I want to hear from you ladies, your thoughts on this about creativity. How do we creatively evolve and embrace the new norm? Who would like to go first?
Yeah. Lynn and I always go at the same time.
Go ahead, Kerstin.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm really short on this one. If you believe that creativity is tied to diversity, as I've mentioned a couple of times, and I think it is, then I think embracing the work and hire from anywhere model really removes the challenges to bring in these diverse candidates. I think whenever possible, we should remove any boundaries that hold diverse candidates back, right? Whether it is revisiting our job descriptions or education requirements, just opening up to a broader pool having conversations, networking. I think all of that helps. And once we have a more diverse team and the thought diversity as well, we can implement creative solutions. So that's really where I was going to go with this. From a process perspective, I feel we talked about it a little bit earlier, talking about outcomes and deliverables. I think if you spun this up backwards with a SIPOC, right, with a SIPOC tool, and you looked at outcomes first and then move your way backwards and figure out all the other pieces versus starting from here's how we have always done it, right? Because then you get stuck. So stepping out of it, saying, what are we trying to achieve? And then looking at today's tools and all the opportunities and asking your often young, diverse candidates to have some innovative ideas, I think you get much further than trying to just improve already existing processes.
Oh, that's a brilliant idea. Yes, yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
I love it all. Yeah, that's very good. So I think what's come out of this is that we've challenged status quo, and us as professionals have honed in on what we like and what we don't like. And now we know that remote work is an option. So we have choices, and there's more choices because the barriers have been removed and expansion has happened because of it. And so I really think what we're taking away from that is, you know, the lessons learned are the time management and the energy management from it all, honing in on what we like and don't like in the workforce, knowing that we have options available and that remote work is possible, and bringing more diversity to the table because of those barriers being removed is now a possibility. And in addition to that, you know, it's really, again, focusing on prioritizing, and the prioritizing that we've done in the past 18 months. We've all ebbed and flowed. There's been peaks and valleys on what we find of value to our day and what fills us up. And that time management, prioritizing, setting boundaries, these are all skill sets that won't leave us now. These are ingrained in who and what we are. And so we can only better build upon them, whatever the future holds.
Yes. You know what I have seen since you're saying we challenge the way things are done. I've seen more and more CISOs. I thought always, you know, being a CISO, the standard is the standard background is that you have to have, you know, computer science degree with some security specialized certifications. And then I'm meeting, you know, CISOs who have majored in philosophy. They have philosophy background, they have a philosophy degree. So and I find more of them very much interested in cybersecurity and make very good CISOs. So that to me was an enlightening idea that you know, people who have a major in philosophy, you know, are very good CISOs, make very good CISOs as well. So yes, I agree with you, challenging the ideas we used to have and the perceptions we used to have. So yeah, your thoughts on this, Jacqui and Vandana? Yeah.
Yes, so one thing that I was thinking is that, you know, this is one thing that's brought kind of the world together because we've all experienced similar things. So we haven't been competing in terms of how to handle, you know, this pandemic. And I guess organizations that have realized also that the pool of candidates has actually grown. Now that you can do it anywhere, you know, traditionally you were saying, okay, well, I need somebody that is in this particular, you know, state or area because they need to come into the office. But now that's expanded the pool of people that you could work for. So teams are now becoming more international. People are looking at, okay, well, you're not in this particular state, you're somewhere else, but actually you're the perfect candidate. So the pool of people have actually grown. So people are looking more creatively in terms of, okay, how can I fill this gap and, you know, use this particular way? And also I think the positive also is that the companies have started to find ways to show that they care to employees. So I don't know about in other countries, but we've seen a lot of people over here in Australia where companies are sending care packs home, which I think is a really great thing. So companies have really had to start to think creatively about how do they, you know, traditionally when, you know, you'd have it like a team building exercise, can't do that anymore. How else can we actually do it? So I think it's really been great in terms of what are the different ways that we can kind of do things that we used to do before, but in a different kind of way. And I know that that won't, it's impossible to change things like, being able to do a brainstorming session on a whiteboard. That's pretty hard to do when you're remote. But I'm sure that all the things that we used to do before, there's always something else that we're thinking about trying to work out a different way to actually do it.
Yes, I agree. And I think it will most naturally come to the younger millennials and Gen Z. I think, I'm seeing my son, he's spent like his 2 first years in college and he's online. And they are very comfortable with that and they don't mind that. So I think they will be defining the new ways of how to think, how to go forward with this new norm. Vandana, again, I see you in the millennial generation. So what are your thoughts on how to creatively handle the new norm?
I would say, yeah, so the care packages is totally one thing where organizations have started to be more warm. Like any festival, anything, they make sure that they treat the employees in that way. Another important aspect is that cybersecurity is diverse, like truly diverse, because we have people from every background, people who are from an engineering background, people who are from, as you mentioned, philosophy, people are from law background. And it's all a mixed generation which is coming up. It's just that how we think of certain opportunity. And I would say millennials have started to make their way out in anything. In anything, they just try and come up with something innovative, something different. So that blows my mind as well, wherein you give them a issue or a query, and they come up with something different solution than you might have even thought of. So I think that is coming up big time. And while we are talking about whiteboarding, what we have started doing is that I've got a pad wherein if I write on the pad, it shows on the screen. So that's sort of a whiteboarding that we do. So companies are becoming more innovative in that area. If you want to showcase something, if you want to train some people, I think that has become even more closer to people. Another aspect that I've really, really appreciate about organization is that they have started to give trainings to people. Like anyone and everyone, you can go for any training. Another important aspect is that to any portal. So that is one amazing thing, because I have done a lot of certifications during this pandemic. I have done a lot of trainings personally from cloud perspective.
So you're saying companies being flexible with the training, it doesn't follow, the path that used to be strictly formalized. Any training you're saying?
Absolutely. So I have seen people who are developers. They are doing the CISSP training, CISP training. Similarly, there are non-auditors. They are taking care of CISA, ISO, and whatnot. So those boundaries for the certifications also, organizations are totally fine in cross-training people. If you want to learn this, okay, go ahead. And then switching within the teams so that you are comfortable in what you do. I remember when I was switching from IBM to my current company, they asked me if you want to join this team, if you want to join that team, and we have options all available. You can experiment with anything. So those things are becoming more flexible rather than waiting for a year and a half. Now you can actually ask for it, and they allow you to change the teams within 6 months also. That's what a change that I've seen.
Yes, that's great. I think those are a lot of great opportunities that we are, reaping out of this pandemic. We thought with all the stress, with all the pressure that we faced at the beginning of the pandemic, that it would be very difficult for us to embrace it. But now we are getting a lot, I wouldn't say lessons learned, but a lot of really, really very good opportunities that if we take forward and we, capitalize on, would really, really improve our lives and improve the way we work. And as you say, ladies, improve the outcome. At the end, I'm really, really very thankful and very grateful to each and every one of you that you are contributing with us in this year's conference for women in cybersecurity in the Middle East. I'm a great fan, and I appreciate all the work that you all wonderful ladies do. And we hope to continue to collaborate in future events. Thanks a lot, and thank you for being here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you
for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great. Thank you very much.